Do we really believe these reports that the SEC cares about college football and wants to stop their expansion at 16 teams? All right, let's breathe deep and let's try and responsibly talk about this. So, around this time last year, as it turns out, about a year removed from it now, you had the big breaking news, OU, Texas, headed to the SEC. It happened right in the middle of SEC media days, one of the biggest stories that I can remember in the last decade plus of college football. And there was a big fear that gripped the sport and gripped a lot of fans, and I was wrapped up in it too, because I wasn't particularly crazy about the notion of a lot of the power teams being consolidated into one or two conferences. That's my personal preference. And so I remember at the time, one of the big talking points was, oh, the SEC's not going to stop there, right? They're going to go 18 or 20 or 24. Maybe some people even thought a 30-team Super League, and they'll just create their own playoff, and they'll be their own universe. They'll detach from the rest of us, and they'll just be their own universe. And I never bought into that. I also was sort of in the middle a little bit because I didn't also know if they were done expanding. To me, where the SEC stood after making that move is the same place they stand right now. I think Greg Sankey and the SEC university presidents, namely, knew that once they expanded, the Big Ten was going to answer. You know why? Because the Big Ten has the power to answer. The Big Ten's the only conference out there, and I think we all know this by now, that had the power to go out and get a USC or UCLA and just grab the LA market. But now both of them, as Chris said, are at 16. At least in the future, they will be at 16. Do we think they're stopping there? Because as Chris mentioned, there have been reports that the SEC and the Big Ten, for that matter, are perfectly willing to just stay put. I would have said stand pat. I've never really known what that means. We got a pat working down the hallway here, but does he stand a lot? No, he's a sitter more than a stander. People choose to work in their cubicles different ways. But I kind of believe that if neither one of them makes another move, I think both of them are happy to stay at 16. With the caveat, and I want to be clear about this, that Notre Dame could change everything. So if Notre Dame were to decide tomorrow that they wanted to join either of them, probably be the Big Ten, but if they wanted to join either of them, then yes, there would probably be a counter move from the SEC. But if that doesn't happen, then think about this with me for a second. The SEC, I think, would be the last one to just want to preemptively at this point make more moves. And I'll tell you why. That would force Notre Dame into the Big Ten. Probably would force Notre Dame into the Big Ten. The SEC has no interest in that. You think Greg Sankey and the SEC want to see the Big Ten get Notre Dame? Of course they don't. So why would they make moves now when they're perfectly fine at 16 that would force that move? I don't think they'll do that. I don't think they want to do that. Could be wrong. Could be other factors in play. I don't think they want to do that. But here's the more overarching issue. I actually believe these guys when they do say they care about the best interest of the sport long term. That's where I think a lot of us differ. I think some of you, rightfully so, have become jaded at the overall direction of the sport because you've looked at some of the decision making and now you've looked at it in a linear fashion and you say, okay, here, every step of the way, these decisions being made scream one thing: greed, money hungry, couldn't care less about the tradition. We'll throw it in the wood chipper if it means that we advance financially. And I get that. What I would counter with is, what if there is sort of a happy medium here where there are two, I guess you could call them truths that converge. One of the truths is they do care about college football. The other truth is there were some inevitabilities coming. And I think COVID kind of put this in fast forward, but I think it was already going to come. But a lot of programs realize long term, we're going to make a move. The sport is going to shift. It's inevitable. NIL, COVID, the portal, like a lot of things have happened over the past 12, 24, 36 months, if you will. I think a lot of them realized if it's going to happen eventually, why not just have it happen immediately? And so there were a certain amount of moves that were going to be made, so they just got made. What if we've seen a majority of the moves get made? You know, I'm kind of wish casting here, as they would say in meteorology, but what if we've seen a majority of the moves made? And what if, just what if the power players are sitting around the table right now saying, are you good? Because, I mean, if you're good, I'm good now. We don't want to burn the entire sport to the ground because of the whole Mansion City metaphor that we use on Late Kick a lot. The Mansion City metaphor is just that it doesn't matter if you build the greatest mansion in the city. If the rest of the city burns down around the mansion doesn't have any property value because it's in a terrible city that no one wants to move to. There are no resources, no civil services, etc. College football is the same way. And I don't think Greg Sankey's an idiot. I don't think that it's Kevin Warren listed as the Big Ten commissioner. I just think a lot more players are in the room there in the Big Ten. I don't think those guys are idiots. And I don't think they look around and say, who cares if the Pac-12 or the ACC exist? It's all about us. I think it's a short-sighted way to look at things. If you and I were playing Monopoly, yes, that's how I would play against you. I want you to lose. I want to bankrupt you. I do not think Greg Sankey, I do not think Kevin Warren, I do not think television networks want to bankrupt other conferences. Because, like I said, it does not matter how big they build their mansions. If it coincides with burning down the city in which the mansion is placed, then the mansion's not worth anything anymore. If college football conferences build themselves up, but they're existing on a foundation of college football overall, but then the foundation starts to erode, doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because those television networks are not getting return on their investment because you've had a critical mass of people leave the sport because what they grew up on is no longer there. So they can't afford that. So yes, I do, Chris, believe that when people tell you via reports that they're happy at 16, I do believe that. Doesn't mean that there couldn't be other moves. I just think that means if they had their way, there wouldn't be other moves.